Welcome back to the Brew Bowl. It's time to take a look at the round 4 summary and see how all the teams and players are doing after 4 rounds of play, basically halfway through the competition on the way to playoffs. Let's take a look. So we'll start off first off with our current leaderboard. So the Ascalon Gladiators have now shot to the top of the leaderboard, the first team to get 3 wins. There's been a lot of draws still in this competition, as you can see through there. So a very tightly contested middle field with lots of big moves happening whenever a team wins a game or loses a game. So certainly we're starting to see which teams are more likely going to be fighting their way through to the playoffs in another 4 rounds' time. Let's take a look at the teams individually. So starting off with the Gladiators, who were in first place, of course. They had their 3-0 win against the Scarabs. So Physera picked up the new skill, the protege there of Foehammers. Although Narepoli is missing next game, I believe due to a sponsorship issue. Blythenera was fired to make room for the fact that Foehammer had the ability now to permanently recruit a star player, and so Carla Von Kill has now joined the Gladiators in Blythenera's place, giving them a very high team value of 1260 when they are fully there. On to the Axolotl Coatls, which of course is Pondo the Mads team. They were part of the first 0-all draw in the competition. 3 seasons in, we are our first 0-all draw. Not Chinese missing the next match. RKO was fired after picking up Sidestep as a secondary skill, and has been replaced with a new blocker, which I think is yet to be named by Pondo, who came along with Fend as well. The Death River Revengers had a 2-1 loss to the Lauren Forest Drakes. And also one of their blitzers is injured and will not be playing in the next game. They did pick up guard on one of their blockers though, so a good strong skill for them. And given the injuries from the last game, they also decided to pick up an apothecary as well. Moving on to Dynamis' team, the Endovole Kodiaks had a 1-0 win against the Warrior Priests. They picked up Shadowing on Magnus, which immediately got fired by Dynamis, and he's then replaced that with a new lineman who randomly rolled Kick as a starting skill, so a much more useful player there than a shadowing lineman in the North team. Moving on to the Fungus Bay Fanatics, who had a 1-all draw with the Marauders. They did lose one of their goblins to death. Tolskrez was killed. Grizz picked up block, and they have now been able to replace their missing troll. So Zulraja Blade Tusk joined the Fanatics after the last match. On to Lawson's team, the Hyodowan Harbours, had a 1-all draw with the Enslavers. Dremy the Sweet is missing a game. He did pick up a catcher, however, and a new lineman. Well, actually, I think replaced the existing catcher and brought in a new catcher and a new lineman. Got Dauntless for free on the new catcher, and also got Strip Ball onto his Blitzer as part of the game upgrade. Moving on to the Ironhold Hammerers, who had that 0-all draw with the Quaddles, as mentioned before. Spoon's team here picked up guard on Jason Kelseyson, always a very handy skill to have on Dwarves. Otherwise, no real changes to the team here. Moving on to the Camry City Scarabs, who of course lost 3-0 to the Gladiators. They did pick up guard on one of their Tomb Guardians after one was out the last game, but also they have another injury. Dram Zagn is missing the next game, but that's just a lineman. They should be okay to continue. They did pick up, I think they picked up a skeleton too I haven't put here. Maybe that Zach Zugnax was a skeleton I haven't actually recorded yet, but or didn't bold to say it was a new player. But I believe I did put a skeleton. Oh no, actually that might be onto the race. My apologies. So yeah, no changes here for the Scarabs. Okay, moving on to Lord Hunger's team, the Leichberg Knights, had their 2-1 win over the Raiders. Picked up 2 new linemen, one of which came with Dauntless, and also got guard onto Gustav Thez. So one of the other powerhouse teams here in terms of overall team value, and we're expected to see some pretty amazing stuff from Lord Hunger going forward with this pretty well equipped out team now. Moving on to the Lauren Forest Drakes, who had their 2-1 win over the Revengers. Did lose one of their linemen to a serious injury, which will miss the next game. Which is pretty much par for the course for this team. Picked up an assistant coach just to keep their treasury down, and also picked up Frenzy on one of their War Dancers. But the other War Dancer is now back from injury, so yeah, they will have a full load of positionals for the next game, which I believe is against the Gladiators. Well, we'll see that shortly. Omar Krieg's team, the Northcote Marauders, had their 1-1 draw with the Fanatics. Just one change to the team here, picking up very long legs on their lineman Hef. Moving on to the Obersteyr race, who had a 2-1 loss to the Butchers. They lost TJ Watson, died for the second time in the season after having been killed on the Dwarf team and then resurrected by the race. He is now permanently dead. They did pick up Mighty Blow on a blitzer, and also here's where they picked up a skeleton, being Zugvaz, new skeleton for the race. Speaking of the Scrayvold Butchers, with their 2-1 win over the race, they lost one of their Bloodseekers to the draft, so can not afford to replace either the Bloodseeker or the Bloodspawn that was previously killed. So they are going into the next match with only 6 players. They are saving their money, so they can then go to replace one of those players later on, and hoping they do well against their matchup in the coming week. Did pick up Armbar on Khazra Onyx Fist, a skill I'm not great at using, so we'll see how well it goes for the team overall. Moving on to the Slow Thicket Pantry Raiders, who had their 2-1 loss to the Knights. They are one of their players, Cedric Patchwood, is missing next game. They did get Frenzy onto a Treeman as a random skill. Could be interesting. Could trigger a lot of go for it, given how slow Treeman move. We'll see if this pays off for them in the long run. Otherwise, no real changes to the team. The Warp Zone Enslavers, AP's team, other team, had their 1-1 draw with the Hyoto Wayne Harbours. Picked up Sidestep on Dawn Michaels as the protege. Also hired a new line rat, but that line rat is missing next game because of a poor management role. And is yet to be properly named by AP either. I think it appears as so not appearing in the next match on tour play. So we'll see what wrestling name he comes up for this player eventually. Okay, and then finally we have the Weesbrook Warrior Priests, who had their loss this week against the Endervelo Kodiaks. Picked up sure hands on one of their linemen, always a handy skill to have, and also picked up a cheerleader just to keep their funds below the 100k mark and not have to roll for expensive mistakes. Looking at the individual player leaderboard, no change here in the overall conversions. I mean, obviously more conversions were made, but it didn't actually affect the current order of placings. Although we are seeing that the retired players or drafted players from previous teams are getting closer and closer to being pushed off the bottom of the board. The scorers, we had Faisira move in front of Bo Jackson for total number of touchdowns. Otherwise, no changes there to the order. Moss Burner still managing to hold the second position, despite only playing one season and then the team leaving after that season. So, yeah, but we will see probably with Faisira sitting on 17, it's likely that Moss will start to move down from the next round. We actually had our first true interception of the league in this round with the Knights thrower Kleist Eichwald picking up an interception. The Gravemaker shown there with the one in brackets is actually an interference or a deflection, but not a true interception. So Kleist both interfered with and caught the ball from an interception. For the casualties caused, the Gravemaker did move in front of Wild Hog Hannah. But as you can see, we've only really got 2 players who are currently in the competition sitting on the most deadly board. So we'll see whether someone can push down the Cleaver, Fiseth, and Wild Hog Hannah since they're no longer able to play in this competition. And both Faisira and Bo Jackson moved up on the most expensive list. But really that's it. Faisira took her last skill, so she is now the outstanding #1 place for most valuable. So 6 is the maximum number of skills any player can get. Normally in 7s, if you had 6 skills, you would automatically be drafted next round because of the way the draft rule works. But with the playbooks in use here, it is possible to keep players like proteges even when they're under those circumstances. All right, the all-important fantasy football league. The update here, so Damas is now in first place with 46 points. Lawson in second with 43. So both great rounds from those two guys, 11 and 10 points for Lawson and then Damas respectively. Lord Hunger has moved up into third place with 31 points, pushing Fohammer down into fourth place. Big Spoon had, after a brilliant start, had a rough few rounds and is now sitting in sixth place. Fifth place, sorry. Omar Krieg in there in 6th with 23 points, and Ponder the Mad at the back with 18 points total. But still 4 rounds to play, so still plenty of action to be had. And we've just done the mid-season redraft, which means that each player lost one positional and two linemen. They could not rehire as part of the draft, and then had to draft in new players. So that might shake up the teams going into the second half of the main competition. Round 5 draw. So, as I mentioned before, we have the Gladiators, the number 1 team, taking on the Drakes. So, 2 former Brew Bowl champions facing each other. The stats here do favour the Gladiators. 10.4 on tour play versus 9.3 for the Drakes. I have to say that I think that is definitely, when I say it's realistic, it's probably not even a big enough gap to represent the difference in these teams. The Amazons really are a team where once they've got some skills, can become really quite deadly. And we're seeing that now with the flexibility that Fohammer can employ with the Amazons, bringing through Ficera with hit and run, having those strength 4 players, although one of them is out, but they now have Karlov on kill. So it could come down to the inducement funds that are surrendered to the Drakes as part of the match. But certainly I think that the Drakes are definitely on the back foot here with the Gladiators in a very good place to maintain their first position. The Enslavers are taking on the Kodiaks. Very close here on tour play, 8.9 for the Enslavers, 8.8 for the Kodiaks. And of course, AP's numbers are always reduced by the fact that he doesn't foul, and fouling is one of the metrics, so that brings the overall average down. Hard to say here. I mean, I think that AP is a very considered player, and Dynamis is an agent of chaos. So it's hard to say how this will turn out. I think it's going to be a fun match to watch for sure, though. We've then got the Hyodo and Harbours taking on the Scarabs. Harbours sitting at 8.2 on tour play, Scarabs at 11.9. Those stats do heavily favour the Scarabs. However, I think that Lawson's team is underrated by the fact that he has been slowly building up his positional base. He hasn't had those 4 positionals and still doesn't at this point in time have those 4 positionals in his team. But as he brings more positionals in, the team gets more flexibility. And I think that High Elves are a very well-based team, especially when it comes to managing and avoiding a real bash team, slow bash team like the Scarabs. It could come down to injuries. The Scarabs could get some early injuries and really create some dilemmas for Lawson with his players. But I think overall, I just don't see that 3 to 4 point gap on tour play being realistic. And I think that the Harbours could do very well. We've then got the Knights taking on the Quaddles. Tour play weighing the Knights at 8.8, the Quaddles at 7.5. Once again, a hard one to say. So this is always entertaining whenever Lord Hunger and Ponder the Mad play. Dice seem to curse both players horribly, so I guess it's going to come down to who gets the worst end of the luck in this particular match. The back half of the round 5 draw now. We've got the Warrior Priests taking on the Hammerers. Warrior Priests sitting on 9.9, Hammerers on 10.9. I think that Spoon is very good at managing the Dwarves and also managing relatively easy to read teams like humans. So I think that, I would definitely be giving this game to Spoon, although obviously I'll be playing the Warrior Priest as hard as I can to try and win. I think that Spoon has just the ability with his team and the focus to be able to handle the humans quite well. The Revengers are taking on the Marauders. Revengers sitting at 9.3, Marauders sitting at 9.5. Quite evenly matched. They are very similar teams, having those strength 4 blockers, the strength 3 main players, although the Marauders have a big guy, which the Revengers do not have. Look, I think that Omar has been doing a lot better now, and I think that I can really see him dominating the Orcs, unless the Orcs get some really good injury rolls early on. I think the main problem the Orcs have, or the main problem that the Marauders will have with the Orcs is their 10 armor value across the board. They're just hard to injure. Then we have the Race going up against the Raiders. The Race sitting on a score of 8.8 on tour play, and the Raiders at 8.2. Look, I don't usually rate the Raiders, but they always surprise me. The Race are a team which has been a bit hit and miss. I'm not that good with Undead. I guess it's going to come down to, when we do the NPC game, who's playing whom. Plus, the Halflings have their 2 treemen back. But I don't know which way this match is going to go. And then finally, we have the Scravold Butchers taking on the Fungus Bay Fanatics. 10.3 is the tour play score for the Butchers and 8.8 for the Fanatics. I want to give this to the Butchers, despite the fact that they have players down. They've got a journeyman they'll get inducements. I think that I think we've also I rolled up the random stadiums, and they got an Astrogranite stadium, which means, well, both teams have a majority 8+ armor value, which means both teams are injuring on a 7+. So I would say that this could be a high injury match on both sides. But normally when things go to high injury, it does tend to favour the Butchers. Maybe the Fanatics will come out with some of their weird plays and still win. But I think that the Butchers probably have this one, and tool play stats reflect that as well, with a 1.5 point gap between the two teams. Anyway, that is it for the summary. Hope you found that informative. Round 5 of the Brew Bowl will start very soon. And then round 6, of course, will be the next novelty round, being the lineman round. We'll have more details on how that will work during this upcoming round. I do know that at least one of the players is traveling a bit at the moment, so I think it may take us a couple of weeks to get through, or 2 to 3 weeks to get through all the games. Then I have a lot of trouble coming at the start of May, so I really want to try and pound through round 5 before I get stuck with flying all over the country and indeed around the world. So thank you for watching. We'll be back here soon with more. Hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to check out the AP Gamer Real Discord channel, where you can come and chat with the players and just be part of the Brew Bowl group, basically. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.